Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Now, today I'm looking at a book which has come to us from Bloomsbury. Bloomsbury produce a very wide range of titles, and Bloomsbury Professional have now taken on the title of it's A User's Guide to Copyright, now actually in a 7th edition, and the current lineup of writers are as follows. The consultant editor is Michael Flint, the general editor is Clive Thorne, and the assistant editor is Jonathan Cornthwaite. And Jonathan, of course, is a friend that we know well, and he in fact told me about the book, and having looked at it, I'm very impressed indeed. So thank you, Jonathan. Now, Elizabeth and I talked about this book, and Elizabeth has been the lead writer on this particular review, and we've given the title for our review, Finding Your Way Around Copyright in the Digital Age. And that's exactly what you're getting. Now, I'm going to show you the book first of all, and you'll get an idea of what's actually in it, because I think it's a first-class statement of where we are at the moment with copyright. There's the front of the book, rather interesting graphic there. There's the spine, and then on the back, in very small writing, so it's virtually impossible to read it, is some blurb about the book and a little bit of information about the authors. And you can see there's some information right at the bottom. Now, opening it up, it's a paperback, and it runs to something approaching, let's have a look, 500 pages. The back of it, the book, has an index. There's the index there, and it's by paragraph numbering, so you should be able to find things reasonably well. It's a detailed index too. You can see from this, just showing you the beginning of it, all references are to paragraph numbers. There we go, so you see that there. Then there are a couple of appendices at the back. You can see the last bit of Appendix 2. We get to Appendix 1 as well. In fact, Part 3 is called the Appendices, and there are a couple of them. It's relevant organisations. Again, a very useful list of people involved. And then Appendix 2 is a table of incidents of copyright. So you've got quite a lot of information. Now, going to the front of the book, you can see how the structure of the book is concerned. That's the front page, and you can see that there are a number of user guides available for data protection, patents or patents, and trademarks and passing off. All part, of course, of the intellectual property portfolio. Can I just mention that in addition to the main editors, there are a number of contributors: Rachel Alexander, Jonathan Cornthwaite himself, Martin Delaney, Alexander Ross, and Clive Thorne as well, who's special counsel to Baker Botts. There's some information about the book. It's available both as a paperback and as a PDF, and the information is there. Then we get on to the preface. Do read the preface, because that will give you some idea. It comes from Michael Flint. It's dated the 15th of October 2017. And what he's actually doing is he's just going back a little bit over older ground to explain what's happened in the past and where we are today with the legislation in particular. Now, from that, he mentions Jonathan Cornthwaite, who has joined the team, and then we get how to use the user's guide. Now, how to use the user's guide is very, very useful, because quite often, and it happens with a lot of the handbooks that I review, it's always useful to know how a book is structured, so you know where to look and what to find. So do read that right at the beginning. The glossary, very useful with IP, because there are lots of little terms and regulations which really you do need to have some sort of assistance with. We've then got the contents section, which is there, which sets out in fairly useful detail what's actually in the book itself, and the book runs through to quite a large number of chapters, finishing off at the end. Chapter 28 is on software, and then you get to part 3. So there's 2 parts with the main chapters, then part 3, which has got the appendices. Then, of course, we've got statutes, a lot of statute law, of course, some statutory instruments, of course, can't be without them. Then the table of cases. Lots of case law, very interesting cases, some of them, which we'll be referring to in a few minutes. Then you get on to the first part, copyright law, and you see the structure. You've got what is copyright law. So you see that's the start of. You've got the paragraph numbering, and you've got an introduction. So it starts off very well. And then you've got, again, fairly useful bullet points all the way through, and then you've got various referencing that follows it. So it's not done in the normal way that we would expect. You do get a little bit of footnoting at the bottom, but you can see that generally speaking it's a book which you should be able to flow through with your reading, and you should be able to find what you're looking for pretty quickly. Here we go, let's go to chapter 11, Rights in Performances. Again, you see the various structure there, and then the footnoting follows the immediate paragraph numbering. So that gives you an idea of how it's actually structured. Again, you can see it clearly there. It's not quite the same as some styles of publication, but nevertheless you should be able to find things very easy, because I didn't find it difficult to navigate. So what do Elizabeth and I say about the book? Well, we say this: as we progress relentlessly into the digital age, we're now in the fourth industrial revolution, if we can call it that, the digital era, with new ideas and technical innovations emerging almost every day, the importance of copyright looms ever larger across numerous aspects of everyday life, and it affects everyone. That's I think a very important point to bear in mind, because of the history, the very recent history of IP itself and copyright law. Quote, "Copyright is encountered by people in a great many walks of life," say the erudite editors of this excellent user's guide to copyright, from television executives to authors, architects, artists, film producers, school teachers and museum curators. So you see there's a wide variety of activity involving copyright. Now, a variety of other endeavours are also dealt with in this book, which, despite the complexity of the subject, and it can look very complex because of the statutes, it's clear, concise, logically organised and relatively easy to understand. That, I think, is the biggest single factor which makes this book stand out. Now, a variety of other endeavours are also covered, as I say, throughout. So depending on what you're looking for, you should be able to find the information in the index. Now, the book is now in its 7th edition. It was first published in 1979, and it comes to us from Bloomsbury Professional, which is a highly regarded and now long established work, of course, in their stable of titles, with each subsequent edition, as you would expect, longer than that published previously. And this current edition is the longest one yet, although still reassuringly compact. And that's actually something I think which is very helpful, because it's a big area, and if you look at some of the practitioner books on copyright, it's enough to turn one off quite quickly, if I can put it that way. So it is rather nice to have something that's relatively small, but will have all the information you need. Now, a useful feature for busy readers of this volume is that it's divided into 2 main parts. Part 1 defines and outlines copyright law generally, and Part 2, this is the convenient bit, applies copyright law to specific activities and professions, each listed under appropriate categories in the carefully detailed table of contents under the general heading of copyright in use. And I think that again will, I hope, help people understand what's actually available. And of course, included in the book are the following. It's just a partial list: publish and periodicals, schools and universities, the music industry, film and television production, broadcasting, internet and mobile, artists, photographers, advertising agencies, software, and of course much more. Very handy this is for those who wish to look up a particular area of concern very quickly. And I think certainly within the creative community, I think this book will be of some help to the layman as well as to the lawyer. Other ease of use features include the section on how to use the user guide, which is right at the beginning. And as I've said before in this and other reviews, it is useful to read how to use the book, because sometimes you make some assumptions about where you might find things, and it just wastes a bit of time. So do read that at the beginning. What you do have again is a glossary, as I've said right at the beginning, of commonly used terms and a detailed index. And 2 appendices include a list of relevant organisations. Again, I think that's a very great help because it's a time saver. Now, it should be noted that fundamentally this is a book for practitioners by practitioners, all of whom are not only experienced but prominent in this area of law. Let me run through them. Michael Flint has presided over all editions of this work, having written the first 3 single-handedly. Now, Clive Thorne, now general editor, is special counsel with Baker Botts and specialises in all areas of IP. And as I've mentioned Jonathan before, Jonathan Cornthwaite, who's a partner at Wedlake Bell, specialises in IP law, the law of IT and other related areas of law, notably commerce and competition. And there are other expert contributors too, including music lawyer Alexander Ross, who's advised an eclectic mix of artists, from David Bowie or Bowie to Bjork to Joss Stone. I hope I've pronounced these names correctly, because they do have their own way of pronunciating their names. Now, let me conclude by saying the purpose of this book, writes founding editor Flint, is to enable people whose jobs, businesses and even hobbies have any involvement with copyright law to acquire a general understanding of it. And in this aim, the book amply succeeds. It's covering all relevant recent legislation, notably in network communications in the digital age. And this is basically an up-to-date and compact quick reference guide, which should be considered a must-have purchase in our view for any practitioner involved in any matter relating to copyright. And as I've said before, in an era where many more people are much more well educated to a higher standard in terms of higher education, it's not a difficult book to read, and I think many people who are non-lawyers will find this book of great assistance as well. Now, the publication date is cited as at October 2017, and I'm recording this at the beginning of 2018. Let me just run through quickly. There's the book again, front part of it. There's the spine, and there's the stuff on the back. Very difficult to read. Then let me open it in the middle. Publishers and printers. Here we go. Now, lots of people have a dream. Remember, there are 10,000 manuscripts floating around at any given time, and only a few hundred ever get published. But publishers and printers, very, very important for copywriting. It sets out in the introduction. It's got an introduction, then definitions. Notice the paragraph numbering. Then it runs through from there. It talks about ownership, quotations, and so on. So really all the questions that you would probably have will be answered. And I think, again, because it's a user's guide, that's the basic purpose of the book. Well, thank you to Michael, Clive and Jonathan for producing the new edition. Very grateful to Bloomsbury for undertaking the publication of this work. I think it helps everybody, and very grateful because it makes our lives a great deal easier if we can at least understand some of the more complex areas of copyright law. So thank you to everybody concerned. Bye-bye.